My phone buzzed against the granite countertop at exactly 6:47 a.m., the notification cutting through the quiet morning like a blade. I'd just poured my first cup of coffee, black, 2 sugars, the same way I'd been drinking it for 40 years, when the screen lit up with David Johnson's name, my lawyer, texting me before 7 in the morning. The mug wavered in my hand, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim, as I read the message that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. Call me now. Urgent. Do not contact your daughter, Emily. As I stared at the message, the weight of David's words sank in. What did he mean by do not contact Emily? Was I being kept in the dark on something much bigger? I could feel the tension in the air thickening with each passing second. Have you ever experienced a betrayal so deep from a family member that it completely shook your world? Let me know in the comments below. The words sat there on the screen, impossible and absolute, and I felt the first cold finger of dread trace down my spine. David had been my attorney for 15 years. He didn't send dramatic texts. He didn't use all caps, and he certainly didn't tell me to avoid my own daughter unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. I set the coffee down carefully, my hand steadier than I felt, and stared out the kitchen window at Lake Mitchell. The water was glass smooth in the early light, mist rising off the surface like something out of a painting. This house, my house, paid off 10 years ago after a lifetime of careful planning and harder work. Sat on 2 acres of prime waterfront property. I'd built a good life here, a stable life. At 67 years old, I woke up every morning sharp, capable, and in control of every detail of my existence. My morning routine was sacred, predictable in the way that brought me comfort. I'd already reviewed my calendar for the day, lunch with my chess club at noon, a 3 p.m. call with my financial advisor about rebalancing my portfolio, dinner ingredients to pick up for the meal I was cooking Ethan this weekend. My checkbook sat on the desk in my study, balanced to the penny as of last night. The Wall Street Journal waited on the breakfast table, still in its plastic sleeve, ready for me to work through while I ate the egg white omelet I made myself every morning. My mind wasn't just sharp, it was meticulous, organized, fully present. So why was my lawyer telling me not to contact my daughter? I picked up the phone and dialed. David answered on the first ring, which told me he'd been waiting, phone in hand. Jack. His voice was tight, controlled in that way lawyers get when they're about to deliver news that will detonate your world. Thank you for calling right away. What's going on, David? I kept my voice level, but my free hand had found the edge of the kitchen counter, gripping it like an anchor. Your text said, Jack, your daughter filed a petition yesterday afternoon. He paused, and in that pause I heard him choosing his words with surgical precision. She's trying to have you declared mentally incompetent. The words didn't land right. They couldn't land right because they didn't make sense. I heard them, each syllable clear and distinct, but my brain refused to assemble them into meaning. Mentally incompetent, my daughter, filed a petition. The phrases floated separately, refusing to connect into the nightmare sentence they actually formed. What? The word came out strangled, barely recognizable as my own voice. Emily filed paperwork with the county court requesting a competency hearing. She's petitioning for full conservatorship over you and your estate. David's professional tone cracked slightly. Jack, I'm so sorry. I got the notification late yesterday and I've been reviewing the documents all night. My vision tunneled. The bright kitchen, the custom cabinets I'd chosen myself 3 years ago, the farmhouse sink I'd installed with my own hands, the view of the lake that I'd earned through decades of careful financial planning, all of it compressed into a narrow tube of reality. The edges went dark and fuzzy. My knees went loose, joints turning to water, and I locked my legs to keep from going down. Daughter. Not Emily's name, the role itself. The word echoed in my head, each repetition like a hammer blow. My daughter was trying to have me declared incompetent. My daughter, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, whose college education I'd paid for in full, who had a key to this house and a place at my table whenever she wanted it. That daughter. Jack, are you still there? David's voice pulled me back. I'm here. I forced the words out through a throat that had gone tight. David, I'm not incompetent. You know that. I manage my own finances. I maintain this property. I know, David cut in, and his voice carried something that made my stomach drop even further. "Jack, there's more. She's been building a case for months. She has photographs, medical statements from Dr. Singh, documented incidents of alleged confusion and memory problems." He took a breath. "And she's already contacted your bank. She tried to get information about your accounts yesterday, told them she was concerned about your ability to manage your own affairs." The kitchen tilted. My daughter had been watching me, documenting me, building a case against me like I was some kind of criminal, except the crime was existing, aging, living my life while she apparently waited for me to slip enough to take everything I'd worked for. "Photos?" I managed. "What kind of photos?" "I don't have all the details yet," David said carefully. "But Jack, we need to meet today. This morning if possible. The hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now, and we have a lot of work to do." 3 weeks. 21 days to prove I was competent to control my own life, to defend my mind, my decisions, my right to exist as a free man in my own home, and the person I had to defend against was the one person who should have protected me above everyone else in this world. I looked down at my hand, still gripping the counter so hard my knuckles had gone white. The coffee I'd poured sat cooling in its mug, forgotten. Outside, the sun was rising over the lake, indifferent and beautiful. Everything had changed, and the day had barely begun. David's office smelled like leather and old books, the kind of place that usually made me feel secure. Today it felt like a courthouse. I sat across from him at the mahogany desk where we'd reviewed estate plans, business contracts, and real estate deals over the years. Never once had I imagined sitting here while he read aloud a document designed to strip away my autonomy. He adjusted his reading glasses and opened the file. "I'm going to read you portions of the petition. It's going to be difficult to hear, Jack, but you need to know exactly what we're dealing with." I nodded, my jaw already clenched tight. David cleared his throat and began. "Petitioner Emily Peterson Walker states that her father, Jack Peterson, exhibits frequent memory lapses and forgets appointments regularly." His eyes flicked up to mine, apologetic, before dropping back to the page. "Petitioner observes that her father has become confused about his finances and is unable to manage his assets responsibly. Petitioner fears that her father is unsafe to live alone and may pose a danger to himself or others." Each phrase landed like a physical blow. Forgets appointments, confused about finances, unsafe to live alone. These weren't just legal accusations, they were character assassinations wrapped in bureaucratic language. They described someone I didn't recognize, someone diminished and failing, someone who needed to be saved from himself. "David, that's not—" "I know," he said quietly. "But there's more. She has supporting documentation." He pulled out another sheet. "A statement from Dr. Singh, my family doctor, the man who'd treated me for 2 decades, who knew my medical history better than anyone." I felt something crack inside my chest. "What does it say?" David read carefully, his voice measured. "Dr. Rajesh Singh states that during recent appointments, patient Jack Peterson has displayed signs of cognitive decline. Patient appears confused during examinations, has difficulty recalling recent events, and demonstrates delayed responses to basic questions. Dr. Singh expresses concern about patient's ability to make sound medical decisions and manage complex health matters independently." The words hung in the air like poison gas. I tried to remember these appointments Dr. Singh referenced, but they blurred together in my mind. Routine checkups, nothing memorable. When had I seemed confused? When had I struggled to answer questions? And then a detail surfaced, sharp and clear. Emily had been at those appointments. She'd insisted on accompanying me, said she wanted to be informed about my health. I'd thought she was being a caring daughter. "She was there," I said slowly, "at those appointments. Emily was always there." David nodded grimly. "I noticed that too. Every appointment mentioned in Dr. Singh's statement corresponds with dates Emily documented in her petition. She made sure to be present for each one. My hands curled into fists on the armrests. Orchestrated. The whole thing had been orchestrated. "There's more," David continued, pulling out a stack of printed photographs. "She submitted visual evidence." He spread them across the desk like a dealer laying out a losing hand. I stared at images of myself, candid shots I'd never known were being taken. There I was in the produce section at Kroger, one hand on my forehead, looking down at my shopping list with what could be interpreted as confusion. Another showed me standing in my own driveway, keys in hand, staring at my car with what the caption labeled disorientation. A third captured me in my workshop, hair uncombed, wearing an old stained t-shirt, surrounded by tools and wood scraps. The caption read, unkempt appearance, unsafe environment. I was reading my list, I said, pointing to the grocery store photo, trying to remember if I needed onions or shallots. I moved to the driveway picture. I'd just gotten new tires. I was checking if they'd balanced them properly. The workshop photo made my face burn. That's my hobby space. I was building a bookshelf for Ethan. I wear old clothes when I work with wood stain. David's expression was tight with controlled anger. I understand, but presented to a judge who doesn't know you, these images support a narrative. She's framed ordinary moments as evidence of decline. He pulled out another document, this one with bank statements attached. She's also raising financial concerns, claims you've made unusual and erratic purchases that suggest impaired judgment. His finger traced down a highlighted line, specifically a $2,000 purchase she characterizes as excessive and unplanned. I knew exactly what that was. Ethan's birthday present. I bought him a gaming computer. He's 15 years old and he got straight A's. He wanted to learn programming and game design and my voice caught. I wanted to encourage that. He's a good kid, David, the best thing in that family. I know, David said softly, but Emily's characterizing it as impulsive spending by someone not in full control of his faculties. She's twisting everything, Jack. Every normal action, every ordinary moment, every generous gesture, she's weaponizing them all. I sat back in the chair, feeling hollowed out. My own daughter had been watching me like a specimen under glass, waiting for moments she could capture and distort. How long had this been going on? How many casual conversations had been traps? How many times had she visited not out of love but reconnaissance? David closed the file and leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. His face was grave, carrying the weight of something worse yet to come. Jack, I need you to understand the full scope of what we're facing here. The hearing is in 3 weeks. If Emily succeeds, if the judge grants this petition, she gets full conservatorship over you. Which means what, exactly? I asked, though part of me already knew. Part of me had known from the moment I read that first text. It means control of everything, David said, each word deliberate and heavy. Your home, your investments, your medical decisions, every asset, every account, every choice about your own life, it all goes to her. You wouldn't be able to sell property, access your own money, or make healthcare choices without her approval. He paused, holding my gaze. Jack, your estate is worth approximately $10 million. If she gets conservatorship, she controls all of it. And based on what I'm seeing in these documents, she's not planning to use it in your best interest. $10 million, a lifetime of work, savings, careful investments, and disciplined planning. Everything I'd built to secure my future, to leave something for my grandson, to maintain my independence in my final years. And my daughter, my own daughter, was trying to take it all. The morning sun streamed through David's office window, bright and ordinary. Outside, people were going about their normal Tuesday, unaware that inside this room a man was discovering that the person who should love him most had been systematically building a case to destroy his freedom. What do we do? I asked, and hated how small my voice sounded. David's jaw set with determination. We fight back. And Jack, we're going to win. I drove home from David's office in a fog, my hands moving through the familiar motions of steering and signaling while my mind churned through the wreckage of the past 6 months. The petition Emily had filed wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated, methodical, built piece by piece over time, which meant the visits, the concern, the family dinners, all of it had been part of something darker than I'd understood. I needed to retrace it. All of it. The house felt different when I walked through the front door. The same furniture, the same view of the lake through the picture windows, but now it was a crime scene. Every room held evidence of my own blindness. I moved through the living room slowly, remembering Emily sitting on that couch 3 months ago, her face arranged in careful concern as she'd asked, "Dad, are you feeling okay? You seem a little off lately." I'd laughed it off. Told her I was fine, just tired from yard work. but she'd pressed. "It's just that you've been forgetting things, little things. I'm worried about you." Her hand on my arm, warm and supposedly loving. I'd felt grateful that she cared enough to notice, to worry. Now I understood she'd been planting seeds, making me question myself, establishing a pattern of concern she could cite later. The kitchen was worse. I stood at the counter where we'd had coffee together just 2 weeks ago, and the conversation played back in my head with sickening clarity. Emily had been looking at the pill organizer I kept by the coffee maker. Nothing unusual, just my blood pressure medication and vitamins. The same routine I'd followed for years. "Dad, do you ever forget to take these?" she'd asked, her tone light, casual. "No," I'd said. "I take them every morning with breakfast. It's just that sometimes older people lose track. Maybe I should help you set up reminders on your phone?" She'd pulled out her cell, already opening an app before I could respond. "We could do a medication tracking system. I could check in to make sure you're taking everything." I'd waved her off, told her I had it handled, but now I realized she'd wanted documentation. She'd wanted to be able to say she'd offered help that I'd refused, more evidence of my supposed decline and stubbornness. I moved to my home office, sat down at the desk where I managed my finances with the same precision I'd brought to my career as an engineer. Everything here was organized, color-coded, filed. My investment statements were in chronological order. My tax returns went back 30 years. This wasn't the workspace of a confused man. But Emily had stood right here, in this very spot, 6 months ago, looking at these same files. "Dad, your system is so complex," she'd said, running her finger along the file tabs. "All these different accounts, all these statements. Don't you think it might be easier to consolidate? I could help you simplify things." The memory crystallized with new meaning. She hadn't been offering to help. She'd been assessing, cataloging my assets, planning how to take control of them. And the doctor's appointments. God, the doctor's appointments. I closed my eyes and forced myself to replay each one. Dr. Singh's office, the familiar exam room that smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. But the visits over the past year hadn't felt familiar. They'd felt strange, off-script, and I'd attributed it to Dr. Singh getting older, maybe losing his easy bedside manner. Now I understood. The questions had been oddly specific, almost leading. "Jack, have you been having any trouble remembering things? Any confusion about where you are or what day it is?" And before I could fully answer, Emily would jump in. "Dad's been having some issues, doctor. Last week he forgot he had a dentist appointment, and he seems disoriented sometimes when I call." I'd tried to correct her. I didn't forget the dentist. I had the wrong day written down. "And I'm not disoriented, Emily. I was just in the middle of something when you called." But she'd talk over me, her voice rising with rehearsed anxiety. "See, doctor? He doesn't even recognize when he's confused. That's what worries me most." Dr. Singh had nodded, made notes, and I'd sat there feeling frustrated and oddly guilty, like I was failing some test I didn't understand. Emily had insisted on being in the room for every exam, every discussion. "I want to be informed about Dad's health," she'd told the nurse. Such a devoted daughter. A recording device. That's what she'd been. A witness who could later testify to my supposed decline, backed by a doctor's clinical observations of behavior she'd coached him to see. Then there was Ryan. Emily's husband had never been particularly present in my life. He was always busy with work, with his phone, with something more important than family gatherings. But 6 months ago that changed. Suddenly Ryan was at every dinner, every visit, always hovering at the edges with that phone in his hand. I'd found it rude. The way he'd be scrolling or typing while the rest of us talked, barely engaging in conversation. Once, I'd even said something. "Ryan, we're having dinner. Can the phone wait?" He'd given me an apologetic smile, slipped it into his pocket. "Sorry, Jack, work emergency." But 10 minutes later, it was out again, angled toward me while I talked about a home renovation project I was planning. He wasn't being rude. He was recording me. Every rambling story, every moment I paused to find a word, every time I repeated myself because I was enthusiastic about something. He'd been capturing it all, building a library of footage that could be edited, taken out of context, weaponized. I felt sick, violated in a way I couldn't fully articulate. They'd turned my own home into a surveillance operation, and I'd welcomed them in. offered them coffee, been grateful for their visits. But there was something else. Someone else. The memory that hurt most. Ethan. My 15-year-old grandson, the kid I'd taught to fish, who texted me memes I didn't always understand, but appreciated because he was thinking of me. Ethan had been different lately, withdrawn. At family dinners over the past 2 months, he'd been silent, pushing food around his plate, avoiding my eyes when I tried to engage him in conversation. I'd asked him once if everything was okay at school. He'd mumbled something about being tired, then excused himself early. Emily had made a joke about teenagers and their moods, but there'd been something sharp in her voice when she'd called after him. Ethan, don't be rude to your grandfather. The boy had looked back at me then, just for a second, and his eyes had been full of something I couldn't read. Pain, maybe, or guilt. He knew. Somehow, Ethan knew what his parents were doing, and it was eating him alive. I sat at my desk as the afternoon light slanted through the window, painting everything gold and false. The house was silent except for the old clock ticking on the mantel, counting down the seconds toward a hearing that could end my independence forever. 3 weeks. 21 days to prove I deserved to control my own life. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal ran. I needed to see the full picture of what Emily and Ryan had built, brick by brick, lie by lie, while I'd smiled and welcomed them into my home. I pulled out my calendar and started making a list. Every visit, every phone call, every concerned question. Every moment they'd been here, watching me, documenting me, building their case. If they wanted evidence, I'd give them evidence. Evidence of the truth. Evidence that I wasn't the confused old man they were trying to paint. Evidence that I was still Jack Peterson, sharp, capable, and fighting back. My phone sat on the desk, dark and silent. No calls from Emily asking how I was doing. No texts checking in. She'd gone quiet since filing the petition, probably on her lawyer's advice. Don't contact the subject. Let the legal process unfold. But the silence was its own message. She'd made her choice. She'd chosen my money over my dignity, my assets over my autonomy. And now she was waiting for the court to hand her everything. She was going to wait a long time. David spread a legal pad across his desk, pen poised like a weapon. Here's what we need to build an ironclad defense. First, an independent medical evaluation. We need a geriatric psychiatrist, someone with unimpeachable credentials, to assess your cognitive function. Second, documentation of your daily activities showing mental acuity. Third, character witnesses who can testify to your competence. And fourth, concrete proof of complex decision-making. I pulled out my own notebook, writing as he spoke. I can do all of that. I know you can, David said. But Jack, we need to be meticulous. Everything you do from this moment forward needs to be documented, time-stamped, and preserved. We're not just proving you're competent. We're proving Emily's petition is malicious. That night, I set up my laptop in the study and hit record on the webcam. My name is Jack Peterson. Today is September 15th, and this is day 1 of documenting my cognitive function. I pulled my checkbook toward me, showing the camera each line item as I balanced the account to the penny. Then I opened the Wall Street Journal website and summarized 3 articles about Federal Reserve policy, tech sector layoffs, and emerging markets. I explained my investment portfolio strategy, breaking down why I'd moved 15% of my holdings from bonds to dividend stocks last quarter. For 40 minutes, I talked to that camera, demonstrating the sharp, analytical mind I'd relied on for 67 years. When I finished, I felt something shift inside me, not quite confidence but determination. They wanted to paint me as diminished. I'd show them exactly who I was. The next morning, David called with a name. Dr. Olivia Carter, geriatric psychiatrist, teaches at the University Medical School, 30 years of experience. She can see you tomorrow at 2. Dr. Carter's office was in a converted Victorian house near the hospital, all warm wood and soft lighting designed to put patients at ease. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-50s, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that didn't miss anything. Mr. Peterson, I understand you're contesting a competency petition. I want you to know that my evaluation will be thorough and objective. I'm not here to rubber stamp anything. I'm here to assess your actual cognitive function. That's all I'm asking for, I said. 3 hours. She put me through memory tests where I had to recall lists of words, sequences of numbers, details from stories she read aloud. Logic puzzles that twisted my brain into knots, but that I worked through methodically. Questions about current events, historical facts, problem-solving scenarios. She asked about my emotional state, my relationships, my daily routines. She was warm but exacting, and by the end I was exhausted, but I'd answered everything clearly, completely, without hesitation. "I'll have my written evaluation completed within a week," Dr. Carter said as I left. "You should be proud of yourself, Mr. Peterson. That was rigorous." While waiting for her report, I reached out to witnesses. My financial advisor, Tom, was outraged when I explained the situation. "Jack, you've made brilliant investment decisions. Just last month you called me about rebalancing before the market dipped. You were exactly right." He agreed immediately to testify. Mike, the contractor renovating my guest bathroom, laughed in disbelief. "You drew up those plans yourself, Jack, specified every fixture, calculated the plumbing requirements, caught an error in my initial estimate. You want me to tell a judge you're incompetent? I'd be lying." At chess club, when I mentioned the petition, 3 members volunteered on the spot. "You're ranked number 2 in this club," Harold said. "You beat me last week in 15 moves. I'll testify to that any day." But the waiting was torture. Days stretched while Dr. Carter compiled her evaluation, and I found myself second-guessing everything. I'd set my keys down on the kitchen counter and forget where I'd put them 2 minutes later. My heart would race. Is this what they'll use against me? I'd pause mid-sentence, searching for a word, and panic would flutter in my chest. Was I actually declining? Had I just never noticed? One evening, I stood in my kitchen holding a coffee mug, unable to remember if I'd already had dinner. The panic was immediate and suffocating. Then I looked at the clean pan in the dish rack, smelled the lingering scent of garlic, and remembered. Yes, I'd made chicken and vegetables an hour ago. Normal forgetfulness, the kind everyone experiences, but Emily had turned normal into evidence. And now I couldn't trust my own ordinary moments anymore. That's what she'd really stolen from me. Not money, not property, peace of mind. I was taking that back too. The knock came at 11:07 p.m., sharp and urgent against the front door. I'd been reviewing documents in my study, and the sound jolted me from concentration into immediate alarm. Nobody knocked at this hour unless something was wrong. I flipped on the porch light and opened the door to find Ethan standing in the yellow glow, his face streaked with tears, both hands clutching his phone like it was the only solid thing in his world. He was 15 but looked younger in that moment, scared, desperate, and trying hard not to fall apart completely. "Grandpa," he said, voice cracking, "I need to show you something, but you can't tell Mom I was here, please. You can't tell her." I pulled him inside, closed the door, and led him to the kitchen. He was shaking. I poured him a glass of water and sat across from him, waiting, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I've been sick about this for weeks," Ethan said, staring at the table. I didn't know what to do. I kept thinking maybe I was wrong, maybe I misunderstood, but then it kept happening and His voice broke. He took a shuddering breath. "Grandpa, I heard them, Mom and Dad. They were arguing about money late at night, and I heard Mom say..." He looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. "She said Dad won't even know what's happening." The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my face calm. "Tell me everything, Ethan." He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I started recording them. I know it's messed up, but I had to know. I had to have proof that I wasn't crazy. His hands trembled as he unlocked his phone. "Grandpa, you need to hear this." He pressed play. The audio was muffled but clear enough. Emily's voice filled my kitchen, and every word was a knife. "Once the court declares him incompetent, we liquidate the investment accounts first. The house we can sell within 6 months. That should clear most of our debt and give us breathing room." Ryan's voice, harder and colder than I'd ever heard it. "Your father won't even be able to contest it. That's the beauty of conservatorship. He becomes legally powerless." Emily again, "I just need to make sure we have enough evidence. Dr. Singh's statement helps, but we need more documentation of his decline. Ryan, I've got hours of footage. Trust me, edited right, it'll look damning." The recording ended. The silence in my kitchen was absolute and suffocating. "There's more," Ethan said quietly. I've been listening to them for a month now, piecing things together. He looked at me with an expression far too old for his face. Dad lost $400,000 in some cryptocurrency investment. I don't really understand it, but it was bad. Really bad. Their house is in pre-foreclosure. I saw the letters from the bank. And Dad's business is failing. They're drowning in debt, Grandpa. And they decided you were the solution. $400,000. Their house. Ryan's business. The numbers clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't about concern for my well-being. This was about financial desperation. This was about stealing my life to save theirs. How long have you known? I asked gently. 6 weeks. Maybe longer. I didn't want to believe it at first. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. She's my mom. I kept thinking there had to be some explanation. But there isn't. She's really doing this to you. Ethan's face crumpled and he started crying in earnest. Not the quiet tears from before, but deep, wrenching sobs. I moved around the table and pulled him into my arms. This boy who was taller than me now but still felt small and breakable. He buried his face against my shoulder and shook. I don't care about the money, he choked out between sobs. I don't want any of it. I just want my grandpa. I don't want them to take you away. I don't want you to end up in some place where you can't make your own choices. That's not right. It's not fair. I held him tighter, my own throat closing with emotion I'd been holding back for weeks. You did the right thing, Ethan. What you just gave me, that recording, that changes everything. He pulled back, wiping his eyes. Will it help? In court? It will help, I promised. More than you know. I gripped his shoulders, looked him straight in the eye. But I need you to understand something. This is going to get harder before it gets better. Your parents are going to fight. And when this recording comes out, they're going to know it came from you. I don't care, Ethan said, and I believed him. Let them know. Someone has to tell the truth. I pulled him close again. You did the right thing. Now let me protect both of us. David listened to Ethan's recording 3 times, his expression growing darker with each replay. When the audio finally ended, he set the phone down carefully and looked at me across his desk. Jack, this is admissible. Single-party consent in our state means Ethan had every legal right to record conversations he was part of or present for. And the content, he shook his head. This is a smoking gun. Emily and Ryan are discussing liquidating your assets before you'd even have a chance to contest the conservatorship. Can we use it in court? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the look on his face. Absolutely, and we will. David opened his laptop. But I want the complete picture before we walk into that courtroom. I've had an investigator digging into Emily and Ryan's finances. The results came in this morning. He turned the screen toward me. Jack, it's worse than your grandson knew. The spreadsheet on the screen was a cascade of red numbers. 400,000 in cryptocurrency losses. That much Ethan had discovered. But beneath it, 85,000 in credit card debt across 7 cards. A second mortgage on their home taken out 18 months ago, now 3 months past due. Ryan's business, Walker Consulting LLC, had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 2 months ago. Their joint checking account showed a balance of $1,200. They're not just in trouble, David said quietly. They're financially destroyed. And 9 months ago, right when this started, they made a decision about how to fix it. He pulled up another document, a timeline he'd constructed. Every piece of evidence Emily had gathered, mapped chronologically. The first doctor's appointment where she'd expressed concerns about my memory, February 14th. The first photograph of me looking confused, February 22nd. Ryan's first appearance at a family dinner with his phone out, February 18th. February 10th, David said, pointing to a highlighted date at the top of the timeline. That's when Ryan's cryptocurrency investment collapsed. He lost everything. And within 4 days, Emily scheduled your first appointment with Dr. Singh, where she started planting seeds about cognitive decline. The pattern was undeniable, methodical. The moment they'd lost their money, they'd started planning to take mine. There's more, David continued, pulling up email records his investigator had obtained through legal discovery. Dr. Singh's office. Emily scheduled every single appointment. She called ahead before each one. The receptionist confirmed it, to brief the doctor about her concerns. Dr. Singh never once examined you alone, Jack. She was always in the room, controlling the narrative. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. He never questioned it? Never thought to talk to me privately? Doctors trust family members, especially adult children who seem concerned. She manipulated him too. David's jaw tightened. We'll be addressing that separately, but for the court case it undermines his entire statement. Then David opened what he called the most damning file. Real estate correspondence. Email chains between Emily and a luxury real estate agent discussing the potential sale of my lakeside property. The messages were dated 3 weeks ago, before she'd even filed the petition. Waterfront properties in this area are selling for $1.8 to $2.2 million, the agent had written. Emily's response, we're expecting to list within 6 months. Father's health situation should be resolved by then. My house. She'd been pricing my house while I still lived in it, believing I was safe. But there was more. Bank records showing Ryan had attempted to add his name to one of my investment accounts 4 months ago, claiming to be acting on behalf of Jack Peterson for estate planning purposes. The bank had flagged it as suspicious and denied the request. Financial power of attorney documents, already drafted and notarized, sitting in Emily's files waiting for a judge's signature to make them active. They had the whole plan mapped out, David said. The conservatorship petition was just the legal mechanism. Once granted, Emily would have liquidated your investment accounts within weeks. The house would have been listed by spring. Your savings, your retirement accounts, everything, funneled into paying their debts. He pulled up one final document. A handwritten note, photographed from Emily's planner, in her distinctive looping script. Phase 1, conservatorship granted. Phase 2, liquidate investments. Phase 3, sell house. Phase 4, trust for dad's care minimum. Trust for dad's care minimum. She'd planned exactly how little she'd spend on me once she'd taken everything I owned. I sat back in the chair, the full architecture of their betrayal finally visible. This wasn't opportunistic or impulsive. This was premeditated theft, dressed up in legal language and false concern. They'd researched conservatorship law. They'd built a documentary case. They'd manipulated medical professionals. They'd priced my assets and drafted the paperwork to transfer them. All while sitting at my dinner table, accepting my hospitality, calling me Dad. They thought they'd won before they even started, I said quietly. David's smile was sharp and satisfied. They thought they were dealing with a confused old man who wouldn't fight back. They have no idea what's about to hit them. He began organizing the files into a presentation folder. Jack, when we walk into that courtroom in 2 weeks, we're not just defending against their petition. We're exposing a conspiracy to commit elder abuse and financial fraud. I looked at the evidence spread across David's desk. The recordings, the financial documents, the timeline of manipulation. Everything I needed to prove the truth. Let's make sure the judge sees all of it, I said. The courthouse hallway smelled like floor polish and old wood, sounds echoing off marble floors that had witnessed a century of legal battles. Mine was just the latest. I walked beside David, my steps steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins, and pushed open the heavy courtroom doors. Emily sat at the petitioner's table with Ryan and their attorney, a sharp-suited woman named Patricia Hendricks, who looked like she billed $400 an hour. Emily's eyes flickered toward me as I entered, then immediately dropped to her lap. She wore a navy dress that made her look professional and concerned, the costume of a devoted daughter. Ryan sat rigid beside her, jaw clenched, staring straight ahead like a man facing a firing squad who refuses to acknowledge the guns. Judge Margaret Lawson presided from the bench, a woman in her early 60s with steel-gray hair and the kind of stern authority that made everyone in the room sit straighter. She'd been on the bench for 28 years, David had told me. She'd seen every scam, every manipulation, every case of elder abuse dressed up in legal paperwork. Nothing fooled her. All rise, the bailiff announced, though we were already standing. The court will hear the matter of Peterson conservatorship petition. We sat. Judge Lawson reviewed the file before her, then looked over her reading glasses at both tables. Counselors, we're here on a petition for conservatorship filed by Emily Peterson Walker regarding her father, Jack Peterson. Ms. Hendricks, you may present your case. Emily's attorney stood with practiced confidence. Your Honor, we're here today out of profound concern for Mr. Peterson's well-being. My client has observed alarming cognitive decline in her father over the past year. We have documented evidence, photographs, medical statements, and witness testimony that Mr. Peterson is no longer capable of managing his own affairs safely. She began presenting the photos David and I had already reviewed. Me in the grocery store, allegedly confused. Me in my driveway, supposedly disoriented. Me in my workshop, looking unkempt and surrounded by tools she characterized as dangerous. Each image flashed on the screen, taken out of context, weaponized. Then Dr. Singh's statement, read aloud in clinical language that made me sound like a dementia patient. Patient displays confusion during examinations, difficulty recalling recent events, delayed responses to questions. Finally, Emily took the stand. She wore an expression I'd seen 1,000 times before, the face she'd made as a child when she wanted something, all wide eyes and trembling vulnerability. But this wasn't a request for a later curfew. This was a performance designed to steal my life. Miss Peterson Walker, her attorney began gently, "Can you describe your concerns about your father?" Emily's voice quivered right on cue. "I'm terrified for his safety. He forgets things constantly, important things, appointments, medications, conversations we've had. He makes impulsive financial decisions that don't make sense. He lives alone in that big house by the lake, and I worry every day that something will happen to him and no one will be there to help." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I love my father. I just want to make sure he's protected and cared for. That's all I've ever wanted." It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't heard Ethan's recording, if I didn't know the truth, I might have almost believed her myself. Judge Lawson made a note, her expression neutral. "Mr. Johnson, cross-examination?" David stood, and when he spoke his voice was quiet but sharp as a scalpel. "Miss Peterson Walker, when was the last time you asked your father about his day? Not his finances, not his health, not his medications. Just his day, his hobbies, his interests, his life." Emily blinked, caught off guard. We talk all the time." "That's not what I asked. When was the last conversation you had with your father that didn't involve questioning his competence, his memory, or his ability to manage his affairs?" She opened her mouth, closed it. Her attorney started to object, but Emily spoke first. I can't remember a specific date." "Can't remember," David repeated. "How often do you visit your father?" "At least twice a week." "And during those visits, do you ask about his chess club, his home renovation projects, the books he's reading?" David paused. "Or do you spend that time photographing him and questioning his mental state?" "I was concerned about his well-being, or concerned about his estate valued at $10 million. Objection. Hendricks was on her feet. "Counsel is badgering the witness." "Sustained," Judge Lawson said, but her eyes were sharp on Emily now. "Rephrase, Mr. Johnson." David nodded. "Miss Peterson Walker, are you aware your father is ranked number 2 in his chess club?" No. "Are you aware he recently planned and is overseeing a complete bathroom renovation, including plumbing schematics he drew himself?" "No." "Are you aware he correctly predicted a market downturn last month and adjusted his portfolio accordingly, saving approximately $40,000 in losses?" Emily's face was pale now. "No, I wasn't aware." David let the silence hang. No further questions. Judge Lawson called a brief recess, then we reconvened for our defense. David called Dr. Olivia Carter to the stand. She was calm, professional, unimpeachable. She walked the judge through her 3-hour evaluation of me with clinical precision. "Mr. Peterson scored in the 95th percentile for cognitive function in his age group," Dr. Carter testified. "His memory, both short and long-term, is exceptional. His executive function, his ability to plan, organize, and execute complex tasks, is well above average. He demonstrates no signs of dementia, no signs of cognitive impairment, and no indicators that would suggest he's unable to manage his own affairs." She looked directly at Judge Lawson. "In my professional opinion, Mr. Peterson is of completely sound mind. This petition has no medical merit whatsoever." I watched Emily's attorney deflate slightly, watched Ryan's jaw clench tighter. But David wasn't finished. "Your Honor," he said, "I'd like to present additional evidence that speaks to the true nature of this petition." He held up his phone, connected it to the courtroom's audio system. "This is a recording made by the petitioner's 15-year-old son, Ethan Walker, in his own home. It is legally obtained under single-party consent laws and has been authenticated. He pressed play. Emily's voice filled the courtroom, clear and cold and damning. Once the court declares him incompetent, we liquidate the investment accounts first. The house we can sell within 6 months. Ryan's response, your father won't even be able to contest it. That's the beauty of conservatorship. Emily again, I just need to make sure we have enough evidence. The recording played for 90 seconds. 90 seconds that destroyed every word Emily had spoken on the stand. I watched the color drain from her face, watched her hands start to shake. She turned to look at me finally, and her eyes were wide with panic and something that might have been shame. Judge Lawson's expression had gone from stern to granite. When the recording ended, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. Miss Hendricks, the judge said icily, does your client wish to withdraw this petition? Emily's attorney looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. Your Honor, we request a recess to consult with... Petition denied. Judge Lawson cut her off. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order prohibiting Emily Peterson Walker and Ryan Walker from contacting Mr. Peterson or coming within 500 feet of his property. She looked at Emily with open disgust. I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of elder abuse and attempted fraud. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell like thunder. Judge Lawson removed her reading glasses slowly, deliberately, and the gesture commanded absolute silence in the courtroom. She looked first at Emily, then at Ryan, then back at the petition file before her as if it were something distasteful she'd discovered on her shoe. In 30 years on the bench, she began, her voice low and cutting, I've rarely seen such a transparent abuse of the legal system. This petition is dismissed. The words landed with finality, but she wasn't finished. What I've witnessed here today isn't concern for a parent's well-being. It's a calculated attempt to strip a competent man of his autonomy and assets under the guise of protection. The evidence presented by the petitioner was misleading at best, fraudulent at worst. The recording played by defense counsel reveals the true motivation, financial desperation masquerading as filial duty. Emily's attorney had gone pale, shuffling papers, as if looking for an exit strategy that didn't exist. Ryan sat frozen, hands clenched on the table in front of him. Therefore, Judge Lawson continued, I'm issuing a restraining order effective immediately. Emily Peterson Walker and Ryan Walker are prohibited from contacting Jack Peterson by any means, phone, email, text, or third party. They are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of his residence or property. They are prohibited from accessing, inquiring about, or attempting to control any of Mr. Peterson's financial accounts, medical information, or personal affairs. She let that sink in, then picked up her pen. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. The evidence suggests possible elder abuse, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. The DA will determine what charges, if any, are appropriate. She looked directly at Emily and Ryan. You attempted to use this court as a weapon against a family member for financial gain. There will be consequences. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Emily made a sound, a choked sob that turned into a wail. She pushed back from the table, stumbling to her feet, reaching toward me across the courtroom aisle. Tears streamed down her face, her careful makeup smearing. Dad, please, she gasped, voice breaking. I'm sorry. We were desperate. We didn't know what else to do. The debt, the house, everything was falling apart, and I just... She took a step toward me, hands outstretched like a child seeking comfort. Please, Dad, I'm so sorry. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I'm your daughter. I stood slowly, gathering my papers, and looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who shared my blood, who I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while I read her stories, the teenager I'd taught to drive, the bride whose wedding I'd paid for. She was a stranger, someone who'd systematically planned to destroy my life to save her own. I turned away, walked past her without a word, without acknowledgement, as if she were invisible. David fell into step beside me. Dad! Emily's voice cracked behind me, desperate and raw. Dad, please! You can't just... Ryan's voice cut through hers, sharp and venomous. "Shut up, Emily." I glanced back just long enough to see him grab her arm roughly, pulling her toward the exit. His face was twisted with rage, not remorse, not shame, just fury at being caught. "Your father just destroyed us. Happy now? All your crying and apologizing? He doesn't care. He never cared about anything but his precious money." Emily was still sobbing, but Ryan dragged her forward, his voice dropping to a hiss I could barely hear. "This is your fault. You said this would work. You said he'd never fight back. Now we've got a restraining order and a criminal investigation, and we're still broke." The courtroom doors swung shut behind them, cutting off Emily's sobs. I stood in the hallway, David's hand on my shoulder, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not my resolve, that was solid as steel, but something else. The last shred of the illusion that my daughter had ever truly loved me beyond what I could provide. Ryan had been the driving force, I understood that now. The architect of the scheme, the one who'd seen my estate as the solution to his failed investments and collapsing business. But Emily had been willing. She'd gone along. She'd looked me in the eye over family dinners and lied through her teeth, all while planning to strip away my freedom. Ryan was the predator, but Emily was the one who'd opened the door and invited him in to feast on her own father. David squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I took a breath, straightened my spine. "I'm fine. Let's go home." Behind us, somewhere in the courthouse, my daughter was crying. Maybe for me. Probably for herself. Most likely for the money she'd never get her hands on. I didn't look back. The afternoon sun was bright and clean when we stepped outside, the courthouse steps crowded with people coming and going, pursuing justice or fleeing from it. My car was parked 3 blocks away. David walked beside me, carrying his briefcase full of evidence that had saved my life. "What happens next?" I asked. "The DA will review the case. Given the recording and the financial evidence, I expect they'll file charges. Elder abuse statutes are serious in this state." David paused. "Jack, are you prepared for what that means? A trial, testimony, public records." "I'm prepared," I said. And I was. Emily had made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences. We reached my car. David shook my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "You did good in there. Stay strong." I drove home alone, the lake road familiar and comforting. My house appeared through the trees, my house, still mine, still under my control. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, letting the reality settle in. I'd won. I was free, and I was utterly, completely alone. David spread the revised estate documents across his conference table 2 weeks after the hearing. "Last chance to change your mind," he said quietly, though we both knew I wouldn't. I read through the pages methodically. Every mention of Emily Peterson Walker had been removed, scrubbed clean like she'd never existed. In her place, a trust for Ethan Walker, structured to provide for his education, living expenses, and future, but protected until he turned 25. Not a penny could be touched by his parents. David had built walls around it that even the most aggressive lawyer couldn't breach. "This is what I want," I said, signing each page with deliberate strokes. My signature looked steady, controlled. Inside, I felt the weight of what I was doing. Not just removing my daughter from my will, but acknowledging that the relationship I'd believed in for 43 years had been a fiction. "It's done," David said, witnessing the final signature. "Emily has no claim to your estate. Everything is protected." The letter arrived 3 days later, my name written on the envelope in Emily's looping handwriting. No return address. It must have been mailed before the restraining order took full effect, or maybe she'd had someone else send it. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it, unfolding 6 pages of her desperate scrawl. "Dad, I don't know how to begin, except to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know what we did was wrong. I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I need you to understand we were drowning. The debt, the bankruptcy, losing everything we'd worked for." I panicked. Ryan convinced me it was the only way, and I was too weak to say no. I told myself we were protecting you, that you'd be taken care of, but I know now that was just me lying to myself. "You raised me better than this. I failed you. I failed myself. Please, Dad. I'm your daughter. That has to count for something." It went on. Explanations, justifications, more apologies. I read it once, every word, then folded it carefully and placed it in a file folder in my desk drawer. I didn't throw it away. Some part of me couldn't, but I never read it again. Some betrayals sever bonds so completely that no amount of apologizing can stitch them back together. Ethan called me the next evening. His voice was quiet, uncertain. "Grandpa, Mom and Dad things are really bad here. They're fighting constantly. Dad's talking about moving out. Mom just cries. And they keep asking me why I recorded them, like I'm the one who did something wrong." "You did the right thing, Ethan. Don't let them tell you otherwise." A long pause. Then, almost too quiet to hear, "Can I stay with you? Just until I finish high school. I can't be here anymore." I didn't hesitate. "Pack your things. I'll pick you up tomorrow." He moved in that weekend with 2 duffel bags and a backpack. Everything he owned compressed into 3 pieces of luggage. I set him up in the guest room overlooking the lake, the room I'd always imagined grandchildren would visit for holidays and summers. Now would be his home. We established routines quickly. Breakfast together before he left for school. Dinner at 6 where we talked about his classes, his friends, college applications. He wanted to study computer science, maybe game design. I helped him research programs, visited campuses, discussed scholarship opportunities. These conversations about his future, his dreams, his potential felt more real than any interaction I'd had with Emily in years. But at night, alone in my study with only the lamp and the silence, I let myself grieve. Not for Emily as she was, the woman who'd tried to steal my life, but for the daughter I'd thought I had, the little girl who'd sat on my shoulders at the zoo, the teenager who'd asked my advice about everything, the woman I'd believed loved me unconditionally. That person had never existed, or she'd existed once and died somewhere along the way, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I mourned that loss like a death, because in a way it was. The Emily I'd loved was gone, and in her place was a stranger wearing her face. 6 weeks after the hearing, I received a call from an elder advocacy coordinator named Margaret Chen. She'd heard about my case through legal circles and wondered if I'd be willing to volunteer to help other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial abuse. "Your story could prevent this from happening to someone else," she said. I thought about it for exactly 1 day before calling her back. "Yes, I'll help." I started giving talks at senior centers, community centers, assisted living facilities. I explained how manipulation works, how family members can weaponize concern, how to protect yourself legally and financially. I told my story, not for sympathy, but as education, as a warning. After my 3rd presentation, an elderly woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "My son has been asking about my accounts," she whispered, insisting I add him, saying he's worried. I thought I was being paranoid, but after hearing you, she gripped my hand. "Thank you. You may have just saved my life savings." That moment, that gratitude, transformed my pain into purpose. Emily had tried to take everything from me. Instead, she'd given me a mission. I would make sure her betrayal protected others from experiencing the same. At home that evening, Ethan was at the kitchen table doing calculus homework. I made us both coffee and sat across from him. He looked up, smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen in months. "Good day?" he asked. "Very good," I said, and meant it. This was what healing looked like. My phone buzzed in my pocket as we walked to the parking lot. David's name on the screen. I answered, stepping slightly away from the him. "Jack, got an update on the criminal case?" David said without preamble. "Emily accepted a plea deal this morning. 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and restitution payments to cover your legal fees. No jail time." I waited for some feeling to surface, satisfaction, anger, vindication. Nothing came. "And Ryan? Ryan's going to trial. The DA has him on fraud charges related to the attempted account access and forged documents. He's looking at 2 to 5 years if convicted." David paused. "How are you doing with all this?" "I'm fine," I said, and realized it was true. It's just mechanical now. Legal process. Justice is paperwork. That's healthy, Jack. You don't owe them your emotions anymore. Justice had happened, but it felt distant, impersonal. Emily's punishment wouldn't give me back the daughter I'd lost, because I'd never actually had her in the first place. The next morning, Ethan and I were on the dock by 5:30 a.m., fishing rods in hand, the lake mirror smooth and painted pink by the sunrise. This had become our routine over the past months. Early morning fishing, just the two of us, the world quiet except for the water lapping against the pilings, and the occasional call of a loon. Ethan cast his line, the lure arcing perfectly over the water. I'd taught him that cast. "Grandpa," he said quietly, eyes on the lake, "do you ever miss her?" I didn't have to ask who he meant. I watched my own line drift, considered the question with the honesty it deserved. "I miss who I thought she was," I finally said. "The daughter I believed I had, who called because she wanted to hear my voice, not because she wanted to inventory my assets. That person? I miss her every day." I looked at him. "But I don't miss who she actually is, and I'm grateful, more grateful than you'll probably ever understand, for who you actually are." Ethan's eyes were bright when he met my gaze. "I'm grateful for you too. You gave me a home when mine fell apart. You gave me family when I thought I'd lost it," I said. "That's the fair trade." We fished in comfortable silence as the sun climbed higher, turning the lake from pink to gold to blue. Ethan caught 2 bass. I caught one and lost another. We threw them all back, because this wasn't really about the fish. It never had been. Blood doesn't make family. I'd learned that the hard way. Emily shared my DNA, carried my genes, had my eyes and my stubbornness and my mathematical mind. But when the pressure came, when she had to choose between my well-being and her financial survival, she'd chosen money. She'd chosen to betray me with methodical precision, to gather evidence of my supposed incompetence while sitting at my dinner table, to conspire with her husband about liquidating my life's work. Ethan shared nothing of my blood. He was my daughter's son, but genetically he was half Ryan, half Emily, the 2 people who'd tried to destroy me. And yet when he'd discovered their plan, when he'd been faced with a choice between protecting his parents or protecting me, he'd chosen truth. He'd chosen integrity. He'd risked his relationship with his own mother to save his grandfather from theft disguised as concern. That was family. Not chromosomes or surnames or shared features, but loyalty when loyalty cost something. Truth when truth was dangerous. Love that showed up when showing up meant sacrifice. I'd spent 67 years believing family was determined by birth. I'd been wrong. Family was determined by choice, by action, by who stood beside you when standing beside you meant standing against everyone else. Emily had taught me what family wasn't. Ethan had shown me what it was. But I also know this: you can survive betrayal. You can fight back. You can reclaim your dignity and your freedom and your life. And on the other side of that fight, you might discover that the family you choose matters more than the family you were given. My daughter tried to steal my future. Instead, she gave me clarity about what future actually matters. Not money in accounts or property deeds or investment portfolios. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever questioned who truly has your back when everything falls apart, subscribe to this channel. Every day, I share stories about betrayal and revenge, about people who fought back when their own family tried to destroy them, about the moment ordinary people discovered extraordinary strength. These aren't just stories, they're warnings, strategies, and proof that you're not alone when the people closest to you become the people you need protection from. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join a community of people who understand that real family isn't determined by blood, it's determined by loyalty. See you in the